Good morning. What a privilege to be out here this morning without snow. I was supposed to introduce Tom, and I was thinking about talking about how practical, insightful he is, and then I looked at this truck and I said, what kind of person would make an announcement for Congress November 9th outside? It may take me a little longer to introduce him than usual because I have to just say every word twice. Well, this is not my first time to introduce Tom as he's running for office. I did when he first time around for a representative. And if you know Tom, and I think most of you here do, let me just explain a few things, and if you agree, you can say amen or clap or throw whatever you brought. But he was a hard-working logger that I'd known for quite a few years. And he got into politics quite by providence because there were some logging issues that he was interested in, and they kind of pushed him to the forefront to represent the loggers. And from that beginning, from those issues, he would come to me and say, as his pastor, he would say, Pastor, I think God is changing my life and my direction, but I don't know what it is. I'm sure he didn't have politics in his mind at that point. But he said, I got a feeling God is changing my life and my direction. And so we prayed about what that was. And now he's in politics. You wouldn't think God would do something like that, would you? We threw him out, and now he's put him in. So quite an exchange. So I looked at what the exchange was, and I see 4 days in Lansing a week, 2-3 days the rest of the week in meetings, meeting with people, long hours, short hours with the family, constantly hearing complaints, dealing with difficult issues whose resolutions no one's going to be happy with, and being misquoted, slandered, and someone would ask him, why do it, Tom? Let me just share with you, and then I'll introduce him. And I want you to know this part of him. Because Tom felt it's a calling. It's a calling in his life to do this. It's not just a job. And there's a big difference between a calling and a job, or a title, or a position. The difference is this: in how you do your job, how you look at your calling. And above all of that is who you answer to. I'm sure Tom's got a lot of people to answer to, but ultimately there's one, and that's important to Tom, and his faith is very important to him. And his prayer has always been this: he wants favor with God and favor with man. Wouldn't we all like that? But the biggest thing is, first he wants favor with God, then with man. And that kind of dictates what he does down there in Lansing, and now when he's going to be in the U.S. Congress, because I believe he'll be there, don't you? Yeah. And that dictates what he'll do and how he does it, regardless of who sees it and who's watching and who's in favor, who's not. But first of all, he wants to do what's right and honorable. And I've been with him several times as we meet for breakfast or lunch. Talk about issues that there seemed to be no way out, no way to vote that's going to be good. And he would say, well, what do you think I should do, Pastor? And I would say, I'm not a politician, I'm a minister, so you've got to do what's right before God. And he did. And somehow God has helped him get reelected and reelected and reelected, and he'll be reelected again. And so thank you for all of you that have come out today. And so it is my great privilege to introduce to you this morning Mr. Tom Casperson. But before he comes, let me say congratulations to him, but he wouldn't be here without his wife, Diane, and his family. Where you are? There you are, Diane. That only cost her $10. She's beginning to be a politician, too. But I do want to introduce to you a good friend of mine, a man that takes his calling seriously, He listens. People know him as being compassionate. We in the UP, I've heard many times from Democrats, independents, as well as Republicans, they would say, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a independent, but I like that man, Tom. And I think he's doing what's best for all of us. And there's just something about him, we trust him. And so this morning, I introduce to you Tom Casperson.
Thank you, Pastor. He has been a good friend. It was actually ironic that Pastor was here. He's since retired, and he's house sitting him and his wife out in the Dakotas. And he happened to come home. A mutual friend of ours passed away and has gone to be with the Lord, and Pastor did the service. And I just took a chance and called and asked him when he was leaving, and he said, I won't be leaving until Tuesday. So I said, I need you one more time. And he was very gracious. And thank you again, Pastor, for being here today. I just accomplished a major feat here this morning. I made it, no problem with the truck. Poor Uncle Marvin, I could see him, his hand was shaking when he let go of the truck and walked over to the car and saw me in it, but he was very gracious, him and Barb. And it was mentioned about Diane, and Hillary's here with me, and I think Tommy and Renee are over here, my son and his wife Renee. Who am I missing? I'm missing, my mother for sure. Mom, chairman of the board, I mean, you can't miss her. She's the reason for the trucks, actually. And I mentioned Uncle Marv, Uncle Don is here, and Aunt Mary. A lot of family members here, friends. And I'm thinking I'm missing somebody. I am. I'm missing two of my children. My son Dane is down at Ferris, going to school down there, and my daughter Ashley is out in Hawaii with her husband Chan and our little grandbaby Oakland. So they can't be with us today, but I know they're with us in thoughts and prayers. And my son Dane, as I mentioned, is in Ferris, but he's also engaged to be married, and Brittany, his fiancée, is at Grand Valley. So our family is growing and expanding, and a lot has happened since we started. And I just got an announcement the other night that my daughter Hillary is engaged to be married as well. Little bit of bad news there. Her fiancé is a Bronco fan, and he had her wearing a Bronco sweatshirt, and I don't... Pastor, I thought the scripture said, teach a child in the way they should go, and they will not part from it, so we're gotta do a little praying here. So let me get started here. I'll get through this, folks, and again, thank you so much for being out here. It's humbling, and it's emotional to have people come and support you year after year like this. And when I first ran for the House, I know Diane and I talked about it, and we thought, will they really support us? And we sent out a letter and asked for support, and it started coming in, and it's never stopped. And you have been there for us through thick and thin, and I want you to know how much that means to me. So this morning, I'm going to be announcing that I am a candidate for the United States House of Representatives for the Michigan's 1st Congressional District. I was born and raised here in northern Michigan, actually right here. My mother and my father, my dad built a home right over here about 3 blocks away. This is my neighborhood. This is where I grew up. This is where my life started. So I worked in the logging business 27 years. I was a log hauler. I followed my grandfather and my dad in the business. Very proud of that. I would tell you that that's a part of my life nobody will ever take away. Pastor mentioned, people, the attacks that come, and people come after you, and you've changed and you've done this, and people that disagree with you. But I will tell you that working with my dad in the log hauling business and being a part of that and it being a part of my life, nobody will ever take that away from me. And that's who I am. As I was part of that industry, I served on the board of directors of the Timbermen. And many of you in here know, but for the sake of just getting it out there again, one of the reasons I ran for office was there was a fatal accident up in the Sagola Township area where a young woman and her 2-year-old daughter were killed when wood came off of a log truck. We started making calls that night. We formed a group, came together, and we said, we have to find a better way to do this. Our industry cannot allow this to continue happening, and we did. And we worked hard at it, and the industry pulled together. We worked with trailer manufacturers, many people. And through the process, to my dismay, the frustration I ran into wasn't with the industry, it wasn't with the mills, it wasn't with the trailer manufacturers, anybody else, it was with the government. And the government kept putting roadblocks in front of us every step we took. And through that process, when that was said and done, I decided, and between my wife and I and prayers, we decided we were going to make a run for the House of Representatives at that time. And it was one of the motivating factors that made me want to run for office to make changes. And Lansing wasn't listening. And when I was elected to the House of Representatives, the first bill I passed was the crib trailer legislation to allow us to haul wood, as you see in this truck right here. That pup trailer that you see back there was a result of that legislation allowing that to move forward. For 11 years, it has been my privilege to represent Northern Michigan's priorities in Lansing. And I don't need to tell you that Lansing doesn't listen. They don't listen. They don't understand how things work here. But we've worked, and I've worked with incredible people to make them listen. We have made some changes. It doesn't happen overnight. And anybody that sits at this podium and tells you they're going to go kick doors in and solve all the problems overnight, it's not going to happen. We didn't get here overnight. But I will tell you that you will have success if you build relationships and trust amongst your colleagues. And you have to put good people around you. And that reminds me that I have to call out one person that's here today. And where is he? Marty Fatante in the back. He doesn't like it, but he's my chief of staff. Marty has been more than chief of staff. He's been a friend. He's like a brother. And I know that he would fall on the sword to help me and protect me. And now we got to keep that amongst ourselves because I got to live with the guys, so let's not let that out. So, you know, way too often it seems that Washington, D.C. is where common sense goes to die. And it really does. And we see that. We see that it almost seems like it's on steroids out in Washington. The very problems that we faced in Lansing with the government listening to us. We've had success, as I mentioned, in Lansing and in Washington. They now are coming into our states, and they're the ones that are putting the restrictions and imposing them on us because I believe, especially in Michigan, they can see the success we're having with Governor Snyder and the team that we put together. And they're stopping that success because the departments seem to want to move in their own direction and not really in the direction that we, the people, want them to go in. That's why Washington needs to change as well, and we need to get Washington to listen. Thomas Jefferson told us that when people fear the government, you have tyranny. But when the government fears the people, you have freedom. I choose freedom. It's time to make government fear the people. Is there anybody here that believes the government today fears us in any way, shape, or form? It seems like they're doing whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it, and they're doing it through rules and regulations. That's got to change. That is what's wrong with our government today. Sadly, we experience the real consequences of government tyranny every day. We've lost our voice to unelected bureaucrats in Washington who want to control every aspect of our lives. From how we educate our children to health care plans we buy for our families. They've created regulations that intrude on our property rights and make it harder and harder to create good paying jobs for our families here in Michigan. It seems government has gotten so big and so powerful that most people have either accepted its power to violate their rights, or they don't think there's anything they can do to stop it. But there is something we can do. I know because working together, we fought the bureaucrats in Lansing and Washington and won. And with your help, we'll keep fighting and winning for the Michigan families. Together, we can restore the principles of limited and representative government that Thomas Jefferson talked about. When we let the government agencies legislate through rules, we lose our liberty and we lose our voice. We can't vote out the bureaucracies, but we can fight back. They think they can ignore us, but we're going to make them listen. Right now, we're fighting the EPA because they won't let us build a haul road from the Eagle Mine to the processing plant. Instead, 100 trucks a day are driving an extra 75 miles round trip through the Northern Michigan campus and the city of Marquette. The EPA killed the road, over 25 acres of wetlands, even after the county offered up some 647 acres to offset it. Everyone except the EPA and their anti-jobs allies supported the road. And through the Freedom Information Act, we've exposed the EPA's national agenda to shut down mining everywhere. You see, folks, it wasn't about the road. It's about the agenda to stop the type of activities that we use as our way of life and our jobs up here. They don't like it. So then they use any form accessible to them to stop us. In this case, the haul road was a convenience for the mining operation and for our way of life, but they made sure it became an inconvenience. We can't let that go on. We'd have cost us hundreds of good paying jobs, which is exactly what it would do, because Washington is having trouble with us with our energy. Washington believes that they need to shut down coal-fired plants like the Presque Isle Power Plant. Many of you in here understand what that meant to us. With total disregard for what the cost of our very way of life would be, they're insisting through rules and regulations to shut down the power plant. You know what their answer is? Their answer is to create a bunch of windmills. That'll solve the problem. You can't run an iron ore mine only when the wind is blowing. That's how they control our way of life. We fought to keep the plant open and sponsored a bill to make sure an agreement to build a new reliable and affordable power source was carried out. Washington even tried to ban the use of wood-burning stoves in northern Michigan. We passed legislation that would not allow the state regulators to regulate that rule. If Washington wants to regulate our wood boilers, then they better come here and do it themselves, because we're not going to do it in Michigan. We can grow our economy and protect our natural resources at the same time. Don't buy into the lie that you can't do both. We can't. Everywhere we look, we see examples of government overreach creating problems for our state and our families, then forcing us to accept their solutions. Just look at Obamacare. Despite the promising people that they could keep their health care plan if they liked, in Michigan alone, over 200,000 people lost their plans in the first year. And this year, Michigan's health care premiums will rise anywhere from just under 10% to just under 40%. Washington didn't listen when small business owners and labor union leaders warned that a mandate changing full-time work from 40 to 30 hours a week would cut wages and kill jobs. Now millions of people are working just 29 hours a week, if they're lucky. There is no problem we have that the federal government can't make worse. Look at the scandalous treatment of our brave veterans who were dying on waiting lists while corrupt bureaucrats were scamming the system for personal profit. Folks, that's unimaginable that we could allow something like that to happen. And yet the federal government has found a way to make that happen. We've seen a massive increase in government programs like food stamp programs that were intended to serve as a handout for those needs, and they have become a way of life for people who have discovered that it can be more profitable to choose government subsidies over independence. We need to change that. We'll fight to promote policies that strengthen our families by creating more good-paying jobs, allowing parents and other caregivers to make the best choices for their loved ones. The values I took to Lansing when I was first elected are the values I learned growing up and running a business here in northern Michigan. And with your support, these are the same values: hard work, fairness, common sense, personal responsibility, and accountability I will bring to Washington. Thank you for coming out. Thank you.